Hello and welcome back to Crew Parley, the reversed version of Parley on this channel. Normally you all submit prompts and I respond to them. Crew Parley, I submit a prompt and then you all respond. Of course, I'll respond to the responses. This one is from January. We got back a little bit late at the beginning of this year, and so I let you all have another month to respond, and now we're going to do two this month. It's a little bit appropriate, actually. So this one was New Year's Resolution Boot Camp themed. Because this is happening in March now, I let people respond through February instead of through January. It's kind of good. If you've been doing a New Year's resolution normally, we're going to say some bad things about those in this parlay, but this is not out of hatred. This is out of affection, camaraderie. It's hard to change oneself. And I don't know how else to say this. Like, you'll have had time to fail. So let's just leave it at that. My prompt was, what do you do, if anything, that's remotely similar to this most questionable of self-improvement practices, the New Year's resolution? Any past experiences, good or bad, you want to share, from yourself or others, as long as you're kind about their potential failures. If you do something more like yearly or seasonal themes, we'll talk about that more later, what's one that's gone really well for you, or that you think others might enjoy? You could even share how this topic has been a struggle for you and tell us about what's causing you difficulty, though I don't mean to pry. It would be interesting to learn from, and there's no shame in having difficulty with building a better you. Indeed. Well said, past Sandy. We are, again, going to say some bad things about New Year's resolutions as a system, not people following them. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm a person who feels very strongly in democratizing knowledge and wisdom, and feeling like, human beings have done some work refining what is a good way to change yourself. And I want that work to benefit me no more than you. If I did work on that, I'm just going to give it away. I want everyone to just have it. It inconveniences me when other people don't. So I'm a person who will work very hard to make a good system, and then I want you to have it for nothing. But I'm not the only one doing that. I don't mean to sound too full of myself. Mine aren't so good. I'm just saying there's lots of other people in that camp, and I think this is a great thing we can do as humans together. It's fun in a way. It's kind of annoying hard work, but like fun in a sense, So on that note, I want to begin with Just Rusty's response. This was the third response, but I think it's a good starting point. Just Rusty, you said, I work at a bar and at markets, which both involve a lot of mandatory small talk. If you ask me in person what my New Year's resolution is in January, I'll joke about how I'm winning at New Year's resolutions because I've been resolving not to have one for the last 10 years. Because spinning it as silly goes down better than most people are too weak-willed to actually change their life when it needs it, and anything I feel the need to change would already be under development without waiting for the new year. Indeed. I might also use it to talk about my contenders for my personal game of the year, as I'd rather talk about games than dieting or cutting X treat or whatever they've been inflicting on themselves. I've basically been in a phase of accelerated change, even by my standards, for the last year and a half, as I go through a divorce and have come out the back of two other separate big traumas, which people don't really want to talk about either, because a lot of people clam up at the moment you drop the D word, divorce, or trauma therapy. I'm happy to talk about those things, but it's not actually what most people want from a New Year's resolution discussion. They want a mutual self-flagellation ritual. Wow, this came out a lot more bitter than I expected. It did and it didn't. I mean, I focus on this type of topic or orbiting around kind of changing things about yourself so often in my own things that I'm not that surprised to find that a good number of you are willing to just say how frustrating that is for you elsewhere, and that's kind of like why you're here in some respect, because it quickly becomes insufferable for people that don't want to hear it if you constantly talk about basically anything that involves not holding your current self as gospel. There's nothing about me that needs to be that way, and if it's not what I like, then I'll just change it. There's nothing sacred or valuable about the way I am. Who cares? I don't. And it's me. So who else is it supposed to be for? But I would imagine that that's gotten people who don't want to talk about that kind of thing running a long time ago. So I'm not that surprised to hear somebody say something like this. I'm actually more surprised that you were the only person who said something like quite like this, just Rusty. But I think it's lovely as a way to start the conversation. So there's a couple bits here. Not doing New Year's resolutions, and then you can't fail, I guess, as a kind of comedy thing, because people know part one of our long sub theme in this parlay of treating people with respect, but not the system because it's bad with respect, is people know New Year's resolutions don't work. It's like a running joke in human society that people simultaneously believe it's good to change oneself, to better oneself, and this way of doing it that I ought to do doesn't work. People know it doesn't work. Why then they don't try a different approach is, to be blunt, beyond me. But some people do, and those people are here in this parlay. So we'll just leave that part at that for now. But indeed, you can kind of make a joke out of they don't work, so I'm just not doing them. I think that's kind of charming in a way, and maybe isn't the worst little push to make people think, huh? I mean, they don't work anyway. Yeah, it might come across to some people like you're saying, I'm just not going to bother changing myself, which is very clearly not true. But whatever, you know. So I think that's funny, personally. You're in good company about that. I don't think that's that bitter. You know, it is frustrating if people think you're supposed to punish yourself. No, it's like the betterment is for you to have fun. Why else are we here? So I think it's great. Now, let's get a little more negative. Can we do that? I think we're already in the... Well, anyway, that's this kind of parlay. You said most people are too weak-willed to actually change their life when it needs it. Willed. Interesting. I think that's true. I also am going to have a common thread in this parlay that willpower is for losers, and that it's better to just make yourself be different rather than feeling like you need to like force push your personality in the direction it needs to go, to create a system that does not allow failure, that prevents failure, rather than a system that would work if you do a lot of heavy lifting. That is at least my goal. I don't think you're trying to evoke that. I think you're just making the point that for a New Year's resolution to work, you would have to apply a lot of willpower. This is a waste of energy. There, you could just use a better system that doesn't require a lot of willpower. And I think that is the beginning of the other sub-theme of this parlay, which is, okay, if you're going to talk a bunch of trash about New Year's resolutions, what would be better, Sandy? It's not anyone else's responsibility, but I'm the one who asked the prompt. So what do you think is better? And of course, we will be talking about that throughout the parlay. I thought it was interesting, this bit in the middle, Just Rusty, where you said that you might use the opportunity to talk about your contenders for your personal game of the year or something like that. A New Year's resolution being maybe a spring off point. You're maybe going a little bit of a step further while on their home turf and saying, well, what happened last year that is worth responding to? This was a good thing from last year, something like that. Indeed, one of the problems with New Year's resolutions is I think they're often not a response to the year that came previously. They're often a response to the person's life so far in general, but they're kind of not that current, I guess. A lot of people's New Year's resolution is just something they think is good in a cosmic sense, not something that is kind of here now. And personally, I think that that's a good tip for directing oneself. It's kind of good to be a little reactive. Like, in general, it's going to involve a lot of long-term planning anyway. So I don't think it's bad to make things fairly local. You know, if what you're fixated on right now is this, I mean, okay, just go with that. It's hard enough to live a good life without being precious about what order things get changed in. So while I'm the first person who would say and over-plan for like a long-term change that will be good when we get there but isn't really relevant to me now, I'm definitely a person who does that. I just don't know if I think that's that good of an approach. It's kind of good to have them be current immediate things. I can definitely see something like the Game of the Year situation, you know, when I do my Build Systems of the Year video on the Zandy Pants channel at the end of every year. it's interesting for me to look at, okay, so what did I find that I liked? And then how can I ideally just play a bunch of those next year and then pick even better ones at the end? Or, were all these games of a similar kind? And then how can I add something else into the mix? And that can be very helpful. Using your game of the year, just as an example, it could be anything, like what food did you like this year? I don't know. What hobby did you enjoy? Movies? Did you enjoy books? Did you enjoy? And then say, okay, how can I, build on that next year is a great idea and a very elegant way to have the change happen at like the motivating moment for a lot of people, New Year's, while having it be something you kind of were working on, even if you didn't think of it that way before the beginning of the new year. We'll get into this more later, but I feel like there's kind of two approaches. If you wanted other people to make better change in their lives, or you wanted to help other people, you could try to make New Year's resolutions better, or you could suggest a rather different system. And I think this would be one way to make New Year's resolutions kind of better. Just make them build on a thing that was good the previous year. I think a lot of people tend to focus on a bad thing and then make it better. It's okay to have weaknesses. And in my opinion, a lot of the time, the better way to fix them is just to focus on your strengths. And when the weakness becomes an annoyance, you can cut it off as a little side quest on the way to that strength. So maybe that would work better for a lot of people. I, just like other people, know that New Year's resolutions don't work, and then for some reason they just won't let go of them. I also know from experience that for whatever reason, people are rather hesitant to adopt a different approach. I could speculate on why that is, but I mean, why not? But maybe later. So the idea of making New Year's resolutions or something very resembling that system, just better, is valuable in my opinion, because the world we live in is one where people will not take a better system. That's what you ought to do, but if people won't do it, I mean, it would be nice to know if there was a way to kind of hack what they have into something better, very much like recycling or reusing a device that is broken. I mean, if you can make it work, it's free, so that can be valuable, even if it would be better to just get a thing that more well fits the task. If this is what you have, go for it. So I just wanted to say a quick word about the going through a lot of accelerated change thing as well, just Rusty, because I had a kind of similar experience a few years ago. My longtime partner at the time and I broke up, and then I spent some time back at my folks', which caused me to kind of need to vomit up all of my worldly possessions and redo my entire schedule, reassess the people in my life, and kind of build it back from there. And this ended up being very, very, very unpleasant, but very valuable, because it meant I got to kind of respond. I was sort of forced to redo a lot of the stuff that had gotten a little stagnant. If anything had been stuck away, I was forced to upchuck it anyway, and so I had to kind of redo stuff. So I can relate to, there is some positive element, maybe, though it doesn't feel very good. I feel like I was probably the most angry, sad, physically in pain, feeling insecure, I guess, like more pragmatically insecure, financially insecure. In ways, the 2 years of my life following that happening were the worst period of my entire life. The worst things happened, but the best things also happened, or at least especially in the 3 years following. Once I fixed all the stuff, it rapidly became also definitely the best part of my life. So I thought that was interesting. It's just been a very concentrated, nauseating roller coaster of emotions. So I just wanted to say, though it's not the same situation for me as it is for you, you know, just a little camaraderie there. And I appreciate that you're sharing it with us, which is an implicit compliment that you don't feel like I and the Parley audience, the other people responding to this Parley, need to be frankly coddled about, the New Year's resolutions being bad and you being frustrated about this stuff. I think it's wonderful that you feel comfortable talking about that a little bit with us. So thanks. I just think that's nice. I'm going to move on to iPatch Notes' response, which continues the theme. They're all going to be this theme. I do not need Father Caesar, or Bugman Gregor, iPatch Notes begins, to tell me to be motivated. Ideally, motivation should be a self-sufficient and self-fulfilling reward. What New Year's and other arbitrary calendar dates provide are excuses. Interesting. Resolutions are socially forecasted, from my upbringing anyway, appointments to make life changes. The will to meet those appointments, though, must still come from within. Indeed, well put. While I have no particular resolve for getting this done by X date, I do have a crippling workahol addiction. Somehow, if it is for someone else on work time, I can accomplish what I would not for myself. Others might call this depression. Laughing with you, not at you. Not too much more to say on resolutions from my end. I will produce results on my time only. Lots of interesting little claims. Very efficient pair of paragraphs there, iPatch notes. The first thing I want to look into is this idea of excuses. Very interesting way to put it. Kind of a thing I thought as well, but I didn't put it in those words. That's nice. Okay, so the idea is that holidays, let's call New Year's a holiday in a slightly more abstract sense for the purposes of this discussion. Holidays on the calendar are kind of an excuse. The thing the holiday wants you to do isn't bad, but using an excuse to do it, So, for example, let's take New Year's, Valentine's Day, birthday of you and people you care about, Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. We're just going to lump together as the winter holidays. Those, it's fine. Maybe April Fools can be put in there. Some big holidays. What do these days want you to do? Well, New Year's is asking you to change yourself for the better. Valentine's Day, express your feelings to the people you care about. Birthdays, show people in your life, including yourself, that you appreciate them. Halloween and April Fools, let loose and have fun a little bit. Don't take everything too seriously and engage with your fellow humans in some public way, in a way that is about fun and just sharing happiness and silliness. And Thanksgiving and Christmas, I'm going to say, are both basically thankfulness holidays. If you're in a part of the world where it seems weird to include Thanksgiving, just understand how huge of a thing it is where I live, and that it's something I don't celebrate literally at all. I live near my folks, but even they often don't celebrate it. It's just considered ridiculous by the people in my circle. But to be thankful, this is not a bad thing. I think we can pretty much all agree on that. The thing that the holiday is telling you to do, these things I think are pretty good. But what's weird, I think, is you flip the excuse idea around. Why would you not be doing those things? If that makes sense. So you're changing yourself for the better, expressing to the people that you care about and that you love your feelings for them, being thankful for the things you have. I would be concerned to meet someone whose character was such that they did not regularly do this to the satisfaction of the people in their life, or to meet people for whom, if people already do those things for them, they don't like count it or something, give people credit or whatever, unless it's like also on the day, if that makes sense. Now, I think to some extent this isn't totally people's fault. They get this expectation that the time to focus on who cares about them or whatever, is the birthday or the Valentine's Day or such. But this is just very bad for humans. Like it's not good. It does not serve the human. It's there's a capitalism thing going on. I don't think any of you really need to be told that. Let's not waste our time on that discussion. Obviously that's there, but these holidays were there long before that was monetized, if you will. And looking at it more positively, sure, people are busy. Yeah. But it's very difficult to be busy in such a way that you cannot have time to show people that you appreciate them. And if you're busy on the day that is someone's one day, I mean, does that mean you don't appreciate them? No, it means you're busy that one day. It's increasingly common nowadays for people to just celebrate their birthday like on a weekend or whatever, when people have time. So that's at least a step in the right direction. But I think you see my point. I mean, again, probably most of this is preaching to the choir for the kind of people that would be listening to Parley. But it's interesting to consider them excuses. If you want to make it more positive, again, on the theme of adapting what's there rather than just using a new, better system. One way maybe that would be helpful for people to think of it would be to think of them more like checkpoints. You're meant to arrive at the checkpoint having already done the thing, but it's a little check-in. How's it going? Maybe if you're working on a theme or a plan, we'll get into them in a few minutes. Maybe this is a time where you can say, how's that going? Do I want to change the system a little bit? I'm in the middle of changing something. That's not, I don't need any excuse or invitation for that. That's, yep, I am indeed aware that I'm living my life. That's one of the most basic things to do in life. I'm working on that. Yeah. But how's it going? You know, that kind of thing. Valentine's Day, a good victory lap for the people that you feel close to in your life. Or, you know, I'm not saying it's bad if you were going to ask someone to date you or whatever, and Valentine's Day is coming up and then you use that time, but we can simultaneously all agree that it would be ridiculous to wait 6 months to do that if you had somebody you wanted to ask out in like July or whatever, August. I don't know what is 6 months. You get it. That's bad. And so I think it's pretty clear when you look at it that way. Everyone intuitively already agrees that using holidays the way they say they're to be used for is bad. Everyone already agrees with that point. You just have to frame it such that they will realize they agree with that perspective. It doesn't make sense to use them as excuses. The definition of success in life is that you do not need the excuse, and thus it's redundant. It's kind of there as, at best, again, kind of a victory lap, but were you to need to adapt that system of holidays to be better, yeah, I think maybe the better way is to think of them like checkpoints. You kind of check in or do something a little more, maybe. But were that to be that I always try to tell my relatives, if you don't know what to get me, don't get me anything. Because the biggest gift you can give me is not giving me something that I just have around. Give me food, or I mean, I would say money if I didn't feel like that was greedy. Really, that's the beneficial gift in my situation, because I'm someone who is drowning in things I've figured out in my own life would benefit me. But no one could ever possibly know those things unless they lived with me, and only one person does. Looks toward partner in the living room. So like in reality, it's very difficult to give me a permanent gift that I will use that I didn't just directly ask for. Though I guess it's easy if we have a conversation. And yet the people close to me have absolutely no difficulty whatsoever giving me things. Because cultivating that personality, there's lots of things I like. It's very easy to give me something I'll enjoy, just not something I haven't already thought of. I guess you can give me more or a different one of it. Some recent examples that were excellent gifts that I really liked were some coffee that had a weird processing. It was a multi-ferment. This is a new trend in coffee, so the coffee is fermented with rose petals and cherries in this case. It's not that there is rose and cherry flavor as per se. The coffee just sits some time fermenting in a barrel like with those ingredients, and then they're removed and the coffee is washed. But the fermentation that took place has now taken on some of those flavor compounds, you can imagine. This is a little controversial in the coffee community, but I don't care. I think that's thoughtless purism. If it makes the coffee more tasty and not in a way that is shortcutting low quality coffee, the coffee itself tastes very good, but they're just adding flavors to make it more than the sum of its parts, then great. It's not quite the same as flavored coffee, often very low quality coffee that has its flavor overwhelmed by a flavor that's added afterward. This is not the same activity. And I think they've been pretty interesting. Honestly, a little hit or miss, but very interesting. And they taste of coffee. They're interesting expressions of coffee's flavor. Coffee already sometimes tastes like cherry and rose, though the rose one, it was a little like that oil rose. Anyway, it was very interesting. I got a lot out of it, and I would have bought it for myself, but I mean, there's a ton of coffee I would have bought for myself. I was recently given tinned sardines by a friend who comes for D&D a lot. That was an excellent gift. I enjoyed that a lot. They were really interesting. They're all packed subtly differently. This one was quite meaty. They were a little bit grilled, so they didn't look very nice, but they tasted great, and they had a very different flavor than a lot of other tinned fish that I'd had. Just fantastic. A small little thing, but it was great. Some dice. I got dice in a little revolver recently. As often the game master in my group, I use these a lot, so it's something I'll use frequently. But these are things that come up as you go. My friend got that tinned fish at the supermarket while thinking about me. Does that not demonstrate that they care about me more than if they were to just wait for the day that says, hey, it's the day where you're meant to find a way to Look, all I'm trying to say is someone who answers questions for people literally for a living, nothing makes you worse at thinking of nuanced, interesting responses to something than being put on the spot. The number one way to make someone unable to give you the best response they can is to say, "What's your favorite food?" Like, I don't know. I've never eaten anything in my life, is the result mentally. But if you just say, "What are some foods you like?" or, you know, pay attention to the person when you share meals with them because you spend time with them because they're important to you and thus you know what they like to eat. And again, that's where it comes back to people are busy, sure. But with a little ingenuity, people can do this. I don't want to coddle people too much. It's not very hard to have thought of the person throughout the year in small ways that are far more meaningful than giving them something right on their birthday. And if you're worried that people will get the wrong idea, tell them this is how you feel. Tell them you think that you can get them a better gift, that you do think of them on and off times other than their birthday. Just tell them that. Have a conversation with them and tell them. I know this won't work for most people, but it's getting a bit condescending, so I'm just going to move on. If you can make the situation so, that is what I think is better. And then we want to get into the big fish for this little response you gave, iPatch Notes. Bit of a tangent, because I think it's a little fun to do that in the middle of these parlay responses. But the big thing in this one is the will for the change coming from within. It's the self-direction. It's kind of like that, secretly not that much of a tangent that I just went on, that there's a self-involvement. I have a plan for what's going on with me. I have reasons why I want to do this, that I think is secretly the reason for the failure behind most resolutions. Even though the system isn't very good, humans have willpower. Well, I don't think that you need to use it for this, and it is for losers to rely on willing yourself to do a thing rather than just making yourself do it, like creating circumstances where you just will do it rather than forcing yourself to even when you don't want to. And people have this fetishization that it being unpleasant is good. You should be able to just give up a lot of your comfort and do something you don't want to, and that's good. No, it's not. Why? There's no, if you get the results anyway. I think that people say that because they're worried that people who disagree aren't willing to go through any discomfort, and they think that's unrealistic, which it is. Obviously, there's going to be things that are unfun in your life, but that's not the same as just settling for it being an unpleasant process. Why? You don't have to. People have this idea that it's kind of better if you went through an unpleasant experience, but why? That's not if you don't need to. That's a waste. Also, again, it's hard enough to be happy in life. I can't believe people are willing to, let me reframe it a little bit, arrogantly act like you can afford to do a system that isn't as reliably going to get you where you're going. No, you can't. Moneybags over here has infinite willpower. Oh, look at me. Like, you're gonna fail otherwise. Like, I'm not that confident in my ability to change what's going on with me. Without the best system, I'm gonna fail. It's too hard. That's the long and the short of it. And people are failing, so I rest my case. I think that the interesting thing is that for a lot of people, the will to meet the appointment of changing yourself coming from within, it's not there. The translation being, there's a thing that was people's resolution, but the resolution goal actually really isn't from them in many cases. It's one that our society says is good and that they feel applies to them. It's not completely impersonal. It's not like they didn't choose it in a way, but they didn't make it up. And unfortunately, I think it is true that you sort of need to do that for it to be a goal that you really care about. Because otherwise you're applying a lot of effort to something that if you look closely, you don't actually have a very good reason for why it needs to be done. For example, a really common one, maybe the most common one that we're going to get back to later, is fitness. But why do you need to work on your physical fitness? I mean, I'm working on that right now, and so I'll tell you, for me, it's because when I do parlay, for example, or stream, this is elocuting for 45 minutes to 3 hours straight. That is a strenuous activity. I do not have the lung capacity that would make me as good at speaking that way as I could have. I would be better at the thing I'm doing for work and be more comfortable, less tired afterward if I was more physically fit. It's not as obvious how but it definitely will make a difference. If you've done any speaking for any length of time, I'm sure you can resonate with that. Also, being in better shape and having better blood flow makes you mediate temperature better. And it's not, the least sweaty when you talk for 3 hours in a small room that has a lot of lights on. So, sorry for the, but this is the kind of parlay it is. It's gross, and I don't want to be as just uncomfortable, and also as like I just jumped in a pool after I'm done streaming. It's unpleasant. So that's one reason, one very specific reason. Critically, it's not because I think I need to look better. I don't need to look better. I mean, no one needs to look better. Do you want to look better? Or do you just think you ought to look better? You see what I'm trying to say? I think for a lot of people, it's that they feel like it goes without saying that they just should do the thing. But this is a very bad way to motivate yourself, in my opinion. It should be something that you genuinely feel upon scrutinizing it is valuable. You agree that it's valuable upon looking deep into it. I think a lot of people are a little too quick to just assume. And when I say, oh, you need your own motivation, people are too quick to say, well, no, but it's obvious. Is it though? I mean, or is it that sometimes, yeah, okay, I'll be blunt. When I look in the mirror, I think, yeah, I could lose a little bit of weight. But why? It's just that I'm being I'm just being mean to myself. Like, no, it doesn't matter. Like, unless it would make your life better, really better, and me gaining a false confidence because I got in better shape doesn't make my life better. It puts my life in a false sense of equilibrium where, unbeknownst to me, I'm still really insecure about my appearance, but I've just accepted for now that there isn't a reason to be. It would be better to just not be insecure about my appearance. And so what I see when I look in the mirror in the morning and think that is, you still need to work on not beating yourself up. What's your problem? You don't have to look different to be a valid human being in the world. Like, stop it. Stop being mean to yourself. And thus my goal for exercising or whatever is only modestly motivating because I only have a modest amount of reason to do it. I don't need to that badly. It would help. I have my own reasons why it would help. But when I do it, I think about what I'm getting out of it. And I think for a lot of people, it's not a transaction. You're not doing it because why are you doing it? What's the point of doing it? You could just not do it, clearly, because you didn't do it. You see what I mean? If you needed to do it, you can bet you would do it. There's a funny little bit in, I don't think this is a very good show, but it's been amusing me for its own reasons. There's a funny bit in Solo Leveling where the gimmick of the show is that people have these magic abilities and they can't change. You just get a certain amount at birth. So you're like E rank through A rank or S rank or whatever at birth. And once it's identified or once it, turns on or whatever, I don't remember how it works. The show doesn't care about that either. That's the rank you are. But our main character has something that sometimes happens, a reawakening. Your rank changes, but his is special. He can improve. This is ridiculous because it's just like normal life. And every day minor spoiler for the beginning of Solo Leveling, but I don't think you'll be that upset knowing this. He gets a daily quest to do like 100 push-ups, like the One Punch Man workout, where people ask him how he's so strong, and he says, I do 100 crunches every day, which is a lot. I'm not talking shit about 100 crunches in a day, but one can do that, and you don't gain the ability to kill God with your bare hands by doing 100 push-ups or whatever. You'll be strong, but not that strong, right? And he doesn't do it one day, and the penalty is that he's trapped in a pocket dimension where he's chased by a giant sandworm for 4 hours. So something that almost kills you, in other words. He's forced to do the exercise, in other words. Not 100% forced, but I mean pretty forced. And even if he gets to the point where he can outrun the worm, that's still just 4 hours of your time gone. It's better to just do the exercise. And in that situation, it's not unbelievable that someone would do that. All of us would do it if we were in that situation. You see what I mean? Because we would be forced to. I think people don't interrogate this enough. Like, the reason people don't do their New Year's resolution is because they don't have to. Like, because you don't need to do it. And I don't need to do my exercise either, but I do think I need to do it relatively more because I have in hand what I would gain, what I lose by not doing it. If I feel tired after working, I think I could improve that by exercising more. And that is what I would gain. I have a moderate thing to gain by doing it. I don't think people think of this that much. It can be hard. You don't know how you'll feel comfortable being in better shape if you're not, to use the physical fitness allegory. You don't know what you'll gain by reading more if you haven't already read more. But come on, this is the age of the internet. I'll tell you, you can find out reading more, for example. Do you want me to tell you what you would gain if you were to read more? And then you can just decide. If you need that thing, you will read more. And if you don't care about it enough, you won't. And there you go. I mean, I'm saying a better system, sure. But I also think the motivation is useful. Wow, I'm getting real snarky about this part. This is not iPatch Notes' fault. It's not me that is reading this from what iPatch Notes has to say. This is just something I've built up over time. This is my snark. It's not me reading this from iPatch Notes. But I guess what inspired it a little bit is what you said about how, you're getting something done by X date, but you do it easier when it's for work in a way. Yeah, because there's a kind of, I bet part of it is that there's this unsung feeling like, well, it's one less thing to worry about. If I'm, getting my stuff done adequately, well, then that thing that kind of needs to get done in a way I can't decide is done. My partner is a graphic designer for a living and works remotely, and we often hem and haw about how the things she's doing for work don't need to be done. They just don't need to happen. They're not valuable or important, and it's pointless, and it can be depressing to do that kind of work. But it doesn't help to pretend it isn't. It is worthless. Like, it doesn't add value to society to do this. But for the companies she's doing it for, by the way, you can do some, and she does do some excellent pro bono work for companies where it does do a lot of good to give them better graphic design. Graphic design can do a lot of good, but not this kind of corporate, we're sending you another email just to spam your inbox, and we're updating the graphic even though no one has even ever looked at the first one because no one looks at those emails, but it's just something we do as a business. Like, that is a waste of human effort. It is. But not of her human effort. It's something the company would need to address. For her, I mean, to get the money, she's exchanging her time and effort for the money she's paid as a salary. And so, in her own words, I mean, I'll get it done to not have to worry about that money, And I completely agree. She nailed it. That feeling of, yeah, there isn't really a reason this needs to get done, but that can be kind of oddly motivating. You can't be in a false sense of stability where really you need to solve an underlying problem when it's not your problem. You just, to get the money, we agreed that I have to do this work. Therefore, that is what I have to do. I don't need to check if that's a good underlying motivation because it's not my motivation. My motivation is the money, and I do definitely need to do this work to get this money. I think a lot of people find themselves the most motivated when they work for other people because it is a time when you do the thing I'm recommending automatically. You don't have to check if there's a good underlying motivation. Or really, I should give iPatch Notes the credit. Your idea that the underlying motivation needs to come from within is basically on autopilot when you work for others. Great. The motivation is as clear as it ever is. You get a literal society points money that lets you exchange for amenities and continue living your life. Probably the most objective benefit you can get from anything in human history. And then not the best, but the most objective, the hardest to argue with, the hardest to be a false positive. It is money. You can buy your rent with it, pay for your rent with it. And all you have to do is do this defined thing. If you have a job where it isn't a defined thing, that sounds kind of unhealthy. Like, maybe it's worth talking to one's boss about that. I think the deal is you exchange your time for money. I, on the other hand, have a career where I don't have a defined thing I need to get done, but if I can come up with something that is valuable to all of you or other people, then I make money. This is also fairly motivating, in my opinion. I have no problem, recording or getting stuff done or thinking about the subject, and it can be fun to do as long as we're on the same page about what is valuable, and we are, because I've stuck to my guns. I've attracted an audience that enjoys I hope you're enjoying this parlay. Anyway, thank you for supporting the channel and paying for it. Let's just put that there. So it's interesting, iPatch Notes, I don't want to put words in your mouth. What I see in your comment is a camaraderie with me to uncompromisingly insist on a good foundation for the changes, to want there to be a good reason for making the change. Because the motivation has to come from within no matter what you do, whether it's willpower or you just want the thing and you put yourself in a situation where you need to do this and so then you do it. Yeah, I mean, either way, the motivation needs to come from you. And so personally, the way I diagnose that, this may not be what you were saying, is that a lot of people could do to investigate more why they want to do the thing, even if, especially if it seems obvious why they want to do the thing, even if it seems like society has told them, it's plain to see why you want to do the thing. Okay, but what is the real benefit of doing this? And if you're not doing it, I mean, you clearly don't need to do it. So why don't you need to do it, if that makes sense? Anyway, I think a very, very interesting approach to thinking about it that way. Producing results on my time only is also something I kind of feel like is a different topic, but I just felt a lot of camaraderie with that, so I will briefly touch on it. That, there are lots of people in the world who the reason that they're, when you're growing up, your parents won't give you too much allowance because they feel like if they give you a lot, you won't want money. You won't need money from elsewhere, and so you won't want it, and thus you won't work. And it's true that in practice, most people won't do anything unless they externally need it, unless circumstances around them force them to need it. I think what's been frustrating for me, and probably for you too, I would imagine, in my life, is that a lot of people won't update their thinking when it's demonstrated that you, or I in this case, are internally motivated. I do only do things that I basically need to do, just like everybody else. At least that's how I see it. But I will make it so that I need to do something. And so if I appear not to do something to outside observers, but I can tell you why I do need to do it, you need to believe me. I mean, I am doing it reliably. So clearly, I do not need a fire lit under my ass to make me do it. You can see that because I'm doing it without there being a fire lit under my ass. Or I lit the fire? Anyway, my ass dragon breath. Let's move on to the next one. The last one, which is by True Parley Grandmaster Food, where we will actually make a comment about what would be a better system. Mr. Food begins right away with that system. I'm a big fan of improving one's life through what I call plans. A plan always consists of an abstract direction and a concrete Ansatz, I think it's pronounced, German for attempt, approach. There is no perfect one-to-one translation. Sure, an abstract direction and a concrete Ansatz. I hope I'm pronouncing that okay. Let's look at a hypothetical example. You want to improve your physical fitness, whatever that means for you. That's our abstract direction. Now you pick a concrete Ansatz, just one or two. That is something you could execute within 1 week, that you can build upon, and that moves you in the direction you want. For example, I'll go swim 3 times a week. The beauty of plans is that you need both the abstract and the concrete to achieve change. If you don't have a concrete Ansatz, you tend to just think about change without ever actually doing anything about it. The Ansatz helps you actually do something. And the abstract direction helps you to stay on track if your Ansatz doesn't work out. Let's say that you spend 4 weeks swimming 3 times a week, but then you notice that it's not for you and you'd rather work out with friends in a gym. Then you can change your Ansatz to, I meet up with my friends on X days. With a bad Ansatz, you might have given up on your plan once you got frustrated, but the direction keeps you on track and allows you to adapt. I tend to have about 2 to 3 plans running in parallel at any given time, and they're updated on a roughly 4 to 8 month rhythm. This often lines up with New Year's resolutions for me, but I don't think there's anything particularly special about that date. Pause here, but you have an example for us. Very interesting, nice detailing of the system. Sure, so to review what Mr. Food is recommending, the plan, as the high-level unit, is an abstract direction and a concrete Ansatz. And the basic mechanism here is that by having 2 elements, if one fails, the other is there to keep you going. The direction helps you find Ansatz that would be appropriate, and the Ansatz makes you actually achieve the direction. Cool. I like this 2-pronged approach. You gave us a kind of interval of time as well, like a season to most of a year is how long these might take. Multiple running in parallel, put a pin in it. I'll come back to that. That's interesting, and I kind of disagree, but we'll come back to that. I want to share it's very similar, approach, and people can mix and match and meet in the middle and do what they would like. If anyone is still watching this video for actual advice, which, by the way, that's fantastic. But I've been such a snarky asshole the whole time, I wouldn't blame people if they weren't. Because this subject frustrates me, and that's what this became a parlay about. But what are you going to do? You know, that's how it is. I hope there is actually useful stuff in here, too. What I do, I do call themes. This was, for me, the jumping off point was CGP Grey's video about themes, but I do it I disagree with a lot of that approach. And I will say, my opinion is that these systems are both kind of good in general. I don't think that the plans structure is good for Mr. Food. I think that's pretty objectively good. Like, that's kind of just better. It's not that some people would prefer a New Year's resolution. If they appear to, I suspect that underlyingly, they're doing a lot of what we've talked about in this parlay, and it's actually not very similar to what a lot of people call a New Year's resolution. So I'm not saying that it's not real. If you know someone who says they do New Year's resolutions and you can see that they succeed, that's real. You're not hallucinating that happened, but I suspect that behind the scenes, there's something more like this happening. Themes. So for me, basically the corollary, we have an example system, so I think that's kind of fun, is that the abstract direction for me is the core. There's two primary rules for the abstract direction for me. The theme, which is what I call them, is something that is broad and resonates with you. So a general idea might be, I had one that was called decision annihilation a few years ago. Another recent one started as strength, but it means like the tarot card strength, like doing things in a strong way, not just getting ripped or whatever. That's not, I don't really care about that. Though fitness, that fitness thing I talked about earlier was part of that theme, but it meant like doing things in a strong way, in a decisive way. But for me, the word that resonated was strength. Doesn't matter if it makes sense to anyone else. For you, it's a relatively abstract word, relatively broad word that resonates with you. You know what it means very clearly. Good. Doesn't matter what everyone else thinks. Be edgy. Make it silly. That's great. Like, make it something like that. It doesn't matter. It's only for you. And the second rule is that it's just what you think is wrong, and you're prepared to change it. It's something that you're not sure that's what it is. That's why it's a theme. You're trying to work on this thing because it's not working. You don't feel like you're doing that well, but you don't know why you're not doing it well perfectly. You might think you know, but you admit at the beginning of the process that I know I don't know if this is the right theme, for sure. You might feel like you do, that's fine, but just be willing to be wrong and say, I'm not doing this well, so evidently I don't perfectly understand the situation, and go from there. Then there's two primary things you're trying to do. The first one is kind of the CGP Grey theme system thing. You use the theme as a way to kind of take a fork in the road and pick the path that's more on theme. The example he gives is like you're in line at, a coffee shop or whatever, and you have nothing to do. Instead of taking out your phone and doom scrolling, take out a phone and, if your theme was reading, then read instead. Something like that. You just take the fork in the road and do the one that is more on theme, directing yourself in a circuitous and confusing and not terribly planned out route to get where you want to go and become a person who does more of what you wanted to do. But I personally think this is more of a minor thing. The bigger thing is an application of the ansatz idea, is to make plans, yes, and you're using the theme to find the plans. And then when the plan is finished executing, the critical thing for me is to look at the results of the plan. The ansatz is what Mr. Food is calling them. But the practical thing you're going to do, you go swimming. And at the end of it, whether you feel like you succeeded, you love swimming and it's not really an ansatz anymore, you're just swimming, or you stop swimming, the key thing for me is look at the result of the ansatz that you took, the result of that little concrete thing that you did, and then look at the theme. Which one isn't working? Is it that the ansatz didn't work, or could it be that the theme is a bit off target, and that's not exactly what you really needed to work on? For me, this is very effective and makes me notice things that I would never have said was my theme in the first place, and to take it in new directions. I'll give you two examples. Decision annihilation. This didn't start that way. I actually don't remember what that one started as, but it was like decisions, basically. I was acknowledging that I'm a person who will overthink anything and that I get a lot of value from that, but that I am being um, very spendy about that decision making. That I'll spend mental effort on anything, regardless of how much it earns it, and that's stupid. And there are things that I've concluded there is no good reason to do differently most of the time. So I'll just do them the same way every time and plan to do that. Make a conscious effort to not make a conscious effort to do the thing differently, which, if it seems like a contradiction, yeah, that was the first hint that this wasn't the right theme, but I thought that's what it was. And so that's what I tried to do. For example, in the morning, I'm going to wake up, take out my night guard and brush my teeth, put on deodorant, and stick my hair in the shower. I just dry it off, and then it sits like this naturally because I've grown it this way for a long time. You can kind of train your hair like that. I don't use any product in my hair. I mean, I use shampoo, but then I wash it out, and I don't use conditioner or hair gel or anything like that. Um, that's what I do in the morning. What order those things happen in, I don't care, just do whichever one is the first one. But I would often like choose when to do that. Just do it immediately when you wake up. I don't gain anything from choosing when to do that. I don't know, like why? That might seem silly to a lot of you, but that was how I was before. It's ridiculous. And those things add up. They end up wasting a lot of energy. For breakfast, I've concluded, based on my experiences so far in my life, that I like having a small breakfast. I don't know for sure if that is exactly the perfect thing for me, but for now, I don't know. So that's the thing that I feel like works for me. Just do it. Just eat something small. For me, it's like sub 200 calories, if you must know. And then I eat bigger meals later in the day, but not too late. We're not getting into that here, but just for your sanity, I eat plenty. Don't worry. But I usually eat one and a half ish, very large meal, and then something small at the beginning of the day. Snacks, That's what works well for me as far as I know now. Again, I know I don't know that that's perfect, but for now, don't waste energy every day redeciding that. As things went on, I realized, well, no, but I mean, just like I said at the beginning of the theme, I gain a lot from thinking through these things. I come up with new ideas, better ways to do stuff often, but certainly not every day. So I don't think the direction of the theme is fundamentally wrong, but how about we have some kind of time where we just agree that you can think through everything. This established something I've really enjoyed so far in my life for the past year or so, the R&D day on Saturdays. That's the day I do it. It's like all bets are off, do whatever you want, overthink the hell out of everything. Great. And now you get the benefit of thinking through all that stuff, not throwing the baby out with the bathwater with overthinking things. But most days you don't. You rely on yourself on Saturday to say, what might be a better idea? Sure, you have time, so go ahead and use that energy now, but don't spend it all those other days. I need it for stuff. As time went on, though, it became clear to me that the real issue was not that relatively minor problem, overthinking whether you wake up in the morning and get ready immediately, or like, I don't know, get some breakfast going first or take a walk first. While it does use some mental energy, not that much. And once I rather quickly accomplished that goal, I pretty quickly realized that the real problem was I was just making too many period decisions. Just too many decisions. And thus began the final form of the theme, not to do less decision making on things, but to do less things. Decision annihilation. Simply remove the root cause, which is there being too many little faffy things to do, and make the environment work for you a little bit more. Automate a little more. Don't take advantage of your comfort with multitasking, I said to myself. Anyway, that was my example. It became quite different. Not do the thing, but don't overthink it. Just don't do the things. I just try to eliminate as many things as possible. Just as an example of the kind of stuff I did, that was one place where I kind of consummated. I like cooking. Cooking can be very good for you. Cooking can be a good thing in many ways, but I'm going to have my small thing at the beginning of the day and not cook it, and then, have a big meal at the end of the day. I dropped some games. For people who've been following the channel for a while, I dropped Genshin Impact is one example. It's just not worth it. It was the thing on my list of, I made a giant list of all the decisions that could be on the chopping block, and that was right at the top of like, I'm spending the most time and decisions for by far the least quality of life. And so it's not that I don't like it, I just like it less than all the other things in my life. So something has to go, and I'm much happier now that I've done that. Not because I don't like playing Genshin Impact, but because it didn't make the list. And I'm not afraid of having done that. Like, I want to cut things. I've done that more as time's gone on. And to get rid of a lot of longer term things that were hanging over me. There was quite a list of stuff that kind of needed to get done in the long term and kept pulling at my attention a little bit. I can't do a lot of that stuff immediately, I've realized, but to at least write it down, to have some abstract plan for it, meant that's off your plate a little bit. You know you can't do anything about it now, so, and if it can't be done on the R&D day either, even a day set aside for it isn't enough, then you just can't do it. So it makes no never mind. Try harder not to worry about it, because you can't do it right now. For example, getting the scar I have on my ear from a piercing that got infected cleared. That will be expensive, and I've tried already, and what the doctor did not work. So it's clearly not going to be a small thing. As far as I know, there's nothing I can do. So, but I want to get rid of it. So put it down, and I'm gonna do something about it in my life. But it's okay. You don't have to give up it forever just because you can't do it in an R&D day. I don't know. I'm not gonna stab it with something. Well, they already tried that anyway. Without going into too much detail. One more example, and then I want to tell you Mr. Foods. Strength, the strength theme. Again, this was more doing things in a strong way. I know that doesn't make sense to all of you. Why call it strength if it's not physical strength? Why not call it decisiveness? Because that word doesn't resonate with me. If it does resonate with you, use decisiveness as your theme, but it doesn't work for me. It's like focusing is one thing related to it. You know, I have two monitors that I really need for a lot of work-related stuff, and it's not trivial to just get rid of the other one. Sometimes I do cover it up, but a lot of the time that will cause me to kind of habitually multitask rather than decisively focusing on the one thing. If this feels a little related to the decision annihilation one, yeah, it's a bit of a response. We talked about that a little before, too, with the Game of the Year thing. You liked something, I liked the decision annihilation theme, and then you respond, what could I do more of? What could happen next? What's related to that problem, too? It's not bad if they're related. I think of them as separate. Things like deciding to just go on the walk, or, you know, have the big meal or whatever. Do the thing that you want to do. And this was a little bit of the willpower's for losers thing, too. Is it okay in your life to have some of this thing? Then just have it. Don't try to not have it thinking, but it would be better if I didn't, like, have a beer or whatever. I like having a shower beer. Fine. I've calculated that it is fine in my life, so just go ahead and have it. Don't fuss over, you know, if you're gonna have it, have it. If you're not sure if you want it, fine. You know, put a glass in the freezer and get ready to have it. And if you don't urgently want it in a little bit, then don't. But, you know, it's fine to just have it if that's what you want. I don't over reward myself, so. Same thing with videos. You know, I'm sort of nervous the video won't go well, I guess. Judgmental, as you can tell I am, of other people. I'm worried that the thing I make won't be just so. I know it won't be as good as I can make it if I make it now, but I have no choice. Do it in a strong way. The only solution is to simply bring what I've got and do the best I can. I don't think this parlay is going that well in the grand scheme of things, because I always don't like when I express my own opinions in parlay, but that's because I'm afraid of being judged on the internet, and I don't care. Logically, like, whatever, it's fine. No, it's not gonna hurt anyone, it's okay. I'm putting effort into being considerate of people because that's how I feel. Like, it's fine. Like, no one's gonna get mad, or even if they do, it's okay. Like, it's fine. But it's scary, right? People who have covered for this much less than me and who say much less considerate things get canceled or whatever on the internet all the time. So I know where that feeling is from, but what are you going to do about it? You know, what I'm going to do about it is try my best. Like, that's all there is to do. That's what the theme means. But you might be able to see where this is going already. Is that really the problem, though? And as I did these concrete things to try to figure out, you know, my ansatz, for example, for the video thing, was to record earlier, to try to not prepare to record a little bit and to put things up that I'm not 100% confident in. You can take them down or move them around if people really hate them or whatever, but you owe it to yourself, I said to myself, to just put things up you're not 100% sure of and accept that some people will think this means that your videos are just bad forever and that you cannot become better at this thing without accepting that you're going to fail at that for some people. You have to just hope that people will be patient and do it. You're not learning to be better otherwise, so just do it. But is that doing things in a strong way? I realized after a few themes where, yeah, making videos like that did help me, but was it because I wasn't doing it in a strong way? I realized to myself, no, I can be very startlingly good at doing the things off the cuff. No, the problem is actually trust. It's that I don't trust all of you, myself, my own methods. I don't think they're strong things. They are. You all are very good judgmenters, arbiters of the quality of the things I'm making. I am good at the thing I'm doing, but I don't trust that any of us are like that. It's not at all actually a problem of the real quality. It's that I've always been bad at trust because it's usually not justified. But I'm more prepared at doing this, and you all are a better audience for this, than any human has ever had or been. So what the hell is the problem? If you're not going to trust these people, you're saying you won't trust anyone, and you think a social contract isn't worthwhile, even if everybody wholeheartedly signs it. Do you actually think that? No, I don't. My whole career is based on me believing that those things are valuable, but I don't actually put my money where my mouth is. That's the problem. That's not very similar to where the goal started, but because I looked at, it's not that this ansatz didn't work. It's that it almost worked too well was sort of the problem. Is the theme not what I thought it was? This is my recommendation. I don't think that Mr. Foot's way of describing it is bad. If anything, I feel like this is just the focus I have on this method has been different. And I think that's the valuable mod that I would suggest. If you're interested, try using the abstract theme as a kind of general guidepost that you play with the idea that it's wrong. What would it mean if that theme was not the correct thing to tackle, and there's actually a different problem? And to find that, just like you use the abstract idea to find ansatz, concrete plans to enact the theme, use the ansatz results to critique the theme. What exactly went well or poorly about this? Could it maybe be that that is the thing that needs revising instead? You'll need new ansatz anyway. I want to get back to the thing about the number of plans running in parallel now, before we get to Mr. Foot's example theme, which is, you said you have 2 to 3 running in parallel. My recommendation for people in general is to not do that personally. I think it's that it's hard. It takes focus to include these things. And personally, I have not felt like I would have the bandwidth for more. But I also want to give the caveat that it kind of depends what you mean by a plan or a theme. Because I'm treating them as themes, maybe it's like that. But using this as a system to do anything, I completely understand having 2 or 3. I have some unrelated little projects going on that don't really have to do that much with the overarching theme, but that I approach a similar way. If that's what you mean, yeah, I guess I agree. I guess I would just say that the way I presented it as a kind of high-level abstract theme that guides a lot of what you're doing all over your life, I wouldn't recommend doing more than one of those at once and having them last, sure, maybe like a 4 to 8 month. I feel like you'll know when they don't need to. When you're nailing the ansatz and the theme isn't changing for a long time, you'll get to the point where you realize I've done it. It's time to move on to another one, or you might even just find another one. There will be something in your life that overtakes the theme you were on as being like worse or more of a priority to change, or you'll have more to gain from some other thing. And then, yeah, that's the next one. I feel like you'll know, but just to give you an idea, if it's taking longer than a year per, I think for a lot of themes people would have, you could have done it within a year. Maybe it's worth trying to speed up a little bit. I don't want to pressure people, but I want you to feel confident. You can change almost anything human beings can change about themselves in a year. So if it takes longer than a year, I would consider if it could be sped up. That's all. I hope that doesn't pressure anyone at all. And some of them are quicker. The Decision Annihilation one took a total of 6 months, but I've already been on the Strength It Became Trust one for 8 months now, and I don't think I'm that close to being done. It's probably going to be like most of the rest of this first half of the year, just looking at the pattern so far. So yeah, I mean, I could see, right, for like fitness, if you're tackling that with the same method, but it doesn't have as high level of a theme, it's just an abstract direction, fitness. I could see that existing alongside. That was the only note I wanted to add. I don't want to nitpick too much, like what level of abstraction your plan applies to. But the way I added in, critiquing the theme itself, I don't know if I would do that thing more than one at a time. That's all. I don't want to add a bad mod to people's technique. Mr. Fruit, you've got one as an example. One plan of mine that's running since December of last year is my personal attempt to slay the dreaded gaming backlog. I've noticed that I owned 85 games that I haven't either started or finished. This causes a mild state of fear of missing out and analysis paralysis that I would like to get rid of. I will also save money on the side. So here's the setup. Abstract direction. Eliminate games from the backlog to reduce analysis paralysis and have fun playing all those games I already own. Concrete ansatz. Create a spreadsheet of the games, because I am a nerd. Get the How Long to Beat database playtime for those games, and start playing the games on the list. If I want to play X game, I play it. If I'm stuck in analysis paralysis, I play them in alphabetical order, skipping games that are in early access or longer than 60 hours. If I feel like the reason why I bought X game no longer applies, and I have no interest in finishing it, I can officially abandon the game, removing it from the list. If I can lower the unplayed games on the list to 10 by the end of the year, I will be happy. Although admittedly that's optimistic. That's a lot, yeah. I will try not to purchase any new games because that would defeat the whole purpose of the challenge, with a few exceptions which get added to the backlog upon purchase. And you linked a spreadsheet. I'm highly amused that you submitted this and I didn't read it until I independently had done this same thing midway through January, if I remember correctly. I made a spreadsheet. The system is very similar to the system that you have. And so I will also comment on this one, on some of the ways I've done it myself. But I think this is great. The idea of making some like light rules isn't a bad idea either, going back to the plans thing. I've experienced that with my own theme thing I was talking about. Making it too concrete, making your theme or your direction too concrete can be bad, but I think it's kind of nice to have some basic rules of things that probably just ought not to happen if you're going to stay on track. So for example, for trust, I have a rule about my videos that I can make the amount of stuff I have scheduled. If I talk myself out of making something I currently plan to make, it's because of fear. So my rule is, during this theme, I'm not allowed to change my mind about making an amount of stuff. It would be better at this point in my life to just make this amount or more things. Don't make less things. If you have something planned to make it. If you absolutely insist on not releasing it, fine. But to make less things is to give in to the anxiety that I don't trust myself or my idea or all of you or the YouTube algorithm or whatever. And that just doesn't, that is off theme. And talking myself out of it is a thing I'm embarrassed to admit to you I would do. And so I've decided, no, not allowed. Likewise for the game theme thing. Having a direction to eliminate games from the backlog, an obvious rule is don't buy more games, except for maybe some particularly allowed exception, and know that they have to be added to the backlog, so you're kind of making it harder to hit your theme. I think that's kind of nice. It encourages you not to add stuff. I know from my own experience, just having that backlog list, it doesn't feel very good to add games to it. Like I think that's a very, very useful thing about this. I highly recommend, if you play a lot of video games, you should totally do this. It took the better part of an afternoon for me to set up, keying in all the games I own, and I put in games on my Steam wish list too. I had a document on my computer that was games I'm planning to play. I put those on there. It took a while, but only the better part of a free day. And now, forever, I have a system for resolving that stuff, kind of like a decision annihilation list 2.0 as well. I'm very, very happy I did it. I think this was maybe more worth doing than even a list of games I have played. I think that I would do that first. I would make the backlog list first. It's totally worth doing. I think a lot of people would enjoy that, and it makes it feel not good, in my opinion, to add another game on. Or I'm more critical even than I thought I would be. I'm already pretty critical of putting games on that backlog list. So if you recommend me a game and I don't put it on there, please don't be offended. It's entirely because I'm just trying my best to make a judgment call. So I will add one thing that I found useful. Let me pull up Mr. Foot's sheet. And a couple of columns that they put on there that I'll tell you about. And you can look at this on Discord in the Parley channel. If you go to the January crew Parley and click it and scroll down, Mr. Fruit's response is near the bottom of that thread. You can find this and see it for yourself, which is awesome, Mr. Fruit. Thank you for showing us. I'm going to read you what the columns are that they included. The name of the game, how long to beat it, according to how long to beat. So some of them say 2 hours, some of them say 11 hours, some of them say 84 hours, some of them say 13 hours, There's a priority column, but almost all of them say true and a few say false. Now, on my sheet, I have a confidence column is basically what it says. And next to it, I have a thing that is similar to what you wrote for like notes, is one of the columns you have, Mr. Foot. My confidence column is next to my reasoning, or whatever I call it, column, which is why I think the game ought to be played, why I think I'll gain something from playing it. And then the confidence column is low, medium, or high, red, yellow, or green. And it means how sure I am that I will get that reason by playing the game, or how good of a reason I think that is, basically. If it were to succeed, how good would that be? It doesn't mean how likely I am to like the game. It just means it might, if that's what I think I'll enjoy about the game. But it's more gauging how likely is it to be worth your time, basically. And sometimes when I want to manipulate a game's position in the list, something that's really helpful about that tool is if I hear something more about it or I think something different about it, you can just take it down a notch. You can say, a lot of the audience says something bad about a game I bring up that I have at high priority on my list. And I think that bad thing they're saying does apply to the thing I thought I would gain out of it. Great. Maybe I knock it down to medium. And if I knock it down to low, and then I would knock it down again, do I consider removing it, maybe? Or even just putting it at the bottom, just lowering it on priority? I also include the year that the thing was put on my list. So like if it was wishlisted on Steam, Steam will tell you when you put it on your wishlist. Very helpful. I'm not sure how helpful that is, but I think it's beneficial to play things you put on your backlog earlier, later, to prioritize the things that are new to the backlog list first, because things that you put on your backlog a long time ago, if you actively play video games and change as a human being, and I've gotten 1 hour and 12 minutes into this parlay, you probably changed enough that a game that you put on your backlog a year ago is just more likely to be interesting to you than a game you put on there 5 years ago. Some people might say the opposite. I want to clear off the games that have been on there a long time. And certainly, if there's a reason you want to play one of those games, I moved Nier Automata up at Mr. Foot's parlay recommendation. Go watch those parlay if you're interested, that Nier Automata related one. And that had been on my backlog for the longest of any game, about 8 years, I think. But that was for a special occasion. So, Mr. Fruit has device on here. PC or Steam Deck or any, some of them say. Cool, useful. I'm basically playing everything on PC, so I don't have this column, but useful if you have it. You might want to take the Steam Deck places you wouldn't want to take other things, or you can't take your PC. Cool, interesting idea. There's a column that says experience, like type of experience. So Mr. Fruit has campaign for a lot of them, art game for a lot of them. I'm going to scroll and see if I have any others. One says other, one says session, which would be like it's Risk of Rain returns. So like Risk of Rain 2 or something like that. Yep, that's cool. I can see how that would be useful. I wrote a highly reductive genre category on my list. So these are what you would expect. I think these genre terms are very unhelpful normally, but if I haven't played the game at all, then the marketing material is kind of what I have to go on. So, I mean, I know what these mean, they're just not that useful. Like, a ton of them say JRPG. What's a JRPG? I mean, I kind of know what they mean by that, but even they don't really know what they mean by it. Like, not really. These games aren't that similar. It's just the best we can do. When I put them on my games I've played list, I don't have any column like this on that list because it's not actually useful, but it's the best we have given the situation. My column for games I've played is more like Mr. Food's column here, with campaign, session, or ongoing game. In fact, my terms session and campaign may have inspired you, slash, you kind of inspired me with those terms, Mr. Food, from previous Parlay. So, yeah, I think that's a better system. Doing that from the beginning seems like a fine idea. I've chosen not to in my list for reasons that I believe even to me remain a mystery. Status, if you've completed it, not started it, whatever. Yep, I think some way to check off that you did the thing is really good. So whatever works for you. For me, it's putting it on my games I've played list, but having a checkbox, great, you know. When you finished it, final playtime, as opposed to the how long to beat, interesting, could be useful data in the future. Notes, I gathered the notes might be from like playing it, like things you thought while you played it, not necessarily the same, I don't know, as my column about why I'm interested in playing the game. But yeah, like result notes could be good. I certainly have that on my games I've played list, which is where I move things after. And then you gave it a rating. Yeah, I think some kind of if you're gonna do this, if you're gonna have a list of games that you're gonna play on your backlog, this is a really valuable data chance. I don't know. A data chance is what I mean. It's a very valuable chance to gather data. Recording in some way. Was this a good recommendation? And what kind of info do I have about that? Can be very, very helpful. I think that's really valuable. In fact, having said that, I think I might switch to just having the games I've completed go to the bottom. So I have a log of all the data about what I wanted to play the game with. But then when I complete it, I just check it off and put it down there. Even though I'm going to put it on my games I've played list, I think I'll do that. Yeah. In fact, let me make a note about that now. Keep completed backlog games on there for data gathering, because you can do a lot with that. Now, something I've done in my main list is to put a little tag for games I've played on whether they were recommended by all of you. I think this is really interesting. I would think that doing the thing I'm doing for a living would make a laser targeted, practically flawless game recommendation system, because you know more about the games I play while having exposure to other similar games than anyone could possibly have. More than me, more than people in my personal life. You know more than is possible for any human to know about what kind of games I would enjoy if you're an involved audience member. Games recommended on the stream, for example, you have like an almost 100% success rate of I love it and it's very interesting. I get a lot out of it and I actually liked it too. I care more about having gotten more out of it, but those recommendations, I had already kind of clocked this a little, which is actually part of why I made the backlog list. I already knew are crazy good, like uncannily good, better than anything could ever give you recommendations. Laser satellite targeted recommendations. So I definitely think recording in some way, my recommendations for recording it are what you thought about it before versus what you thought when you played it. Record that somehow. Where the recommendation came from versus how much you enjoyed the game. Record that somehow. And then perhaps just keeping an eye on genre or like a developer. My partner has another list that is yet different again from Mr. Foots and mine in subtle ways. And one of the things she's chosen to put on it is developer and publisher. Personally, I feel like this is relevant to me rarely enough that I just don't think it's worth the work. But I think it's a very interesting idea. Maybe I'll do it if it starts working for her. It's a nice idea. Maybe a correlation. You like things from this publisher, or these publishers are different, but you realize actually it is the new version of this other publisher or developer. Anyway, size of developer could be interesting. Yeah, go nuts. I hope that's a fun idea for some people. If you take away anything from this, we probably drove most people off that could really use New Year's resolution advice, but maybe this is a fun new plan thing to enact in your life in a local way. I would say this is a good example of what I was talking about before. 2 to 3 plans, I initially went, oh, I don't know. But this isn't one that I think I would use like a theme. It's more like a goal in your life that you systematically accomplish this way. But I guess then what I'm recommending is just you could also use that structure for more abstract, like high level life things. And I would recommend adding that. Does the theme actually hit the right target? And to use your ansatz, your concrete thing you're going to do to correct for that, to look at it and say, if this succeeded or failed, what were the results of my ansatz? And what does that mean? Maybe I need a different ansatz, or could it be the theme? Maybe. Because by a thing in your life broadly not being the way you want it, you can take it as a given that you don't know exactly what you would want it to be. So use the system to correct for that. Use it knowing you're probably wrong about the theme in some way, and then just correct it somehow. There's no further way to change yourself, that's the trick, than to change the theme you are using to change yourself. The system is basically guaranteed to work. Even if you fail, especially if you fail, you have essentially done the thing that you set out to do and changed something about you. So, I hope some of that was fun, interesting, useful, annoying, but in a way that you found enjoyable to listen to. Man, yeah, just Rusty, we're on the same side there. Just a massive snark fest for me. So hopefully that was listenable. Folks, if you want to participate in Crew Parlay, a lot of you can. I made this perk previously because I have a lot of audience members that are like Twitch Prime subs, so they have Amazon Prime, and that lets you subscribe to one channel without paying anything more on Twitch while the creator still gets money. A lot of you do that. There's a lot of people who are just patrons on Patreon, but they're at the $5 tier, not the $9 full parlay tier. $9 is a lot, I know. Though for parlay, I think it's a reasonable price. I know that's a lot of money. $5, something a lot more people are willing to do. And I have a lot of people, the largest number of people by far, at that $5 tier. I have a $3 tier, and that's less populated. I have that $9 tier, that's got a lot of people. But the $5 tier is by far the biggest. And I didn't have any explicit perk there. And I made this because I wanted people to have something. Is there something we can offer at that level that would be fun? And we kind of can. Group parlay, crew parlay. I'm going to have to reverse it, I thought. So that's the idea of these. So a lot of you listening, I know statistically from checking the YouTube side analytics, a lot of you listening to this have access to this for free already. So please feel free to use it. You either are Twitch Prime or you have one of my Patreon tiers already that gives you access to this. If you're Discord and that platform, Twitch, Patreon, you could do it on YouTube too through YouTube members. If those things are synced up, then you have access to this channel already. Every month I post a prompt and a thread, and you just reply in the thread. So if you want to participate in these, I'd love to have you. It makes them more fun. And I know these seem like long responses. I will, of course, speed it up a little bit as there are more responses as the system grows, but I don't think it's going to be that necessary. They will naturally equilibrate to some extent. And never in my career will this system be overpopulated, I don't think. I'm just not shooting for that large of an audience such that this will be flooded with people. I can make a sustainable living without it being that hundreds of people respond to Crew Parlay. And even if that did happen, I think there are things we could do about that. Like I can think of a few solutions to that if that were to happen. So don't worry about that. Please respond with something. It doesn't have to be as long as some of these. Some of them are short. iPatch Notes, I thought that was a very economical response, and Mr. Foot's long response had a lot in it that was really useful. So you could do either, don't worry about it. Try to use economy of language, but I feel like everybody who responded to this did great, full marks. Not that that's what you're here for. So thank you. It was valuable and just interesting to hear. I hope I didn't take it over too much with my version. I just wanted to provide a point of contrast. Looking forward to the next one, and it'll be kind of soon because, as I said, I extended this January one into February, so there will be a February Crew Parlay coming out in like 10 days or so as well, and then we'll go back to one per month. So you can respond to the one for March right now. It's up, and I'll tell you that again in the February one. Talk to you soon. See you in the next one.